Hi everyone, and welcome to Shaluso. I'd like to thank Zega Watches for providing me with this watch to review. Check their links in the description below if you'd like to see their selection of watches. And today, we're going to be looking at the Zenith Defy Classic Skeleton.
The Zenith Defy Classic was released in 2018 and represented a forward step for Zenith as a brand which had often been characterized by leaning on its past and specifically its movement, the El Primero. This was a conscious move by then CEO Jean-Claude Biver, who had been assigned as head of LVMH watches to help resurrect the Zenith brands in a similar fashion to how he had done in the past with Blancpain, Omega, and most recently Hublot. And Biver's signature, the skeleton dial, which he's displayed across Hublot and Tag Heuer already and now Zenith, is seen as the first step towards creating a design language for the future of Zenith. But the 41mm Defy Classic is so much more than just its dial. The all-titanium case and bracelet are sculpted with a geometric fashion that's evocative of things like the royal oak, but without being derivative. And the satin-finished case with selective use of polished surfaces allows for a level of discretion that previous Zenith Defy models didn't have. And all of that beautifully finished metal now shrouds an open work dial, which proudly displays the Elite 670K caliber, and they've ensured that being an open work dial, every single facet on the inside as well is perfectly decorated. Smooth polished bevels run across the edges of the Zenith Star inspired skeleton structure that is throughout the dial, and then it's a blackened satin finish across all of the surfaces that one sees on the face. And then little touches of color, such as the blue Rayhot for the seconds track, or the red ruby jewels, and of course the silicon escapement, all of which make the difference in bringing this movement to light, showing it as something technically advanced but still with room to have some fun. On the wrist, the first thing you notice is how light this watch is. This is a full bracelet watch, but obviously being made out of titanium, it weighs next to nothing, and you notice that as soon as you put it on. Or better said, you don't notice because it's so light. You'll find yourself regularly checking your wrist to see if it's fallen off, but rest assured the double deployant clasp keeps it securely on your wrist and opens easily when you are ready to take it off. But that being said, you won't have much reason to take it off. It's such a comfortable watch by virtue of its lightness, and it's such a versatile watch as well, with 100 meters water resistance and a very low profile of being only 10.75 millimeters thick. You can easily wear this watch for any occasion, from casual right up to formal. You can throw it on a leather strap, or you can even take it to the beach as well. And beating inside this titanium case, we have the Elite Calibre 670 SK. SK obviously being for the skeletonized variant. Unlike its El Primero stablemate, the 670 SK beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and this allows it to achieve a respectable power reserve of 50 hours. But needless to say, one of the biggest highlights of this movement is the silicon escapement, which is not only anti-magnetic, but also requires no lubrication, therefore allowing it to have much better longevity and reliability as a component of this movement. And one more quirk of this movement is that it actually features a double quickset, which allows you to set the date forward and back easily without having to cycle through the whole month if you need to move back a day or two. It was a bold move for Zenith to introduce a watch that essentially goes right up against things like the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, in that it's an integrated bracelet sports watch with a 100-meter water resistant, 3-hander, and a date. So they had to make sure that their finish and detailing was up to par, even though it does trade at a much lower price point than those. And you notice this by both looking at it and handling it, that they've taken it as far as they can while still being able to maintain its accessibility. Polish is used sparingly to create character lines, both across the bezel and along the shoulder of the bracelet. And Zenith hasn't over-festooned it with logos, instead picking places like the crown, obviously the 12 o'clock, and using the movement rotor itself as a way to show its brand, making itself present but not too obvious either. And the bracelet itself is not only comfortable because of its light weight, but also because of the way the links are shaped. There's plenty of space for aeration, but just the way that it folds around your wrist and molds itself, it feels as if it's tailored to your wrist from the second you put it on. And last but not least, you can see from all the detailing on the movement and the decoration that they've made the most of this open work concept. It's not just a gimmick. They've made sure that every little bit is designed and thought through. At the end of the day, what they've done is they've made a Zenith that's all about the movement without it being an El Primero. They've made a Zenith that can stand on its own 2 feet for being a great watch on its own.
So that's my impression of the Zenith Defy Classic with a skeleton dial. And this was a great experience, mostly because with the skeleton dial, you can really appreciate the intricacies of the movement, both when you're looking at it from the back, where it does have a display case back, but also from the front as well. You can see the whole thing working in harmony whenever you look at the watch, no matter the angle. On top of that, I love the fact that Zenith trying to move forward and create a new future for themselves. They've lent so much on the El Primero, but at the end of the day, that's a movement. They need a physical icon. They need a watch that they can actually call their icon, and I feel at least like the Defy Classic could be that icon. But before we get too ahead of ourselves and naming icons and all that, let's first take a look at the 3 positives and the 3 negatives of this watch. Now, the first thing I'd like to highlight is the use of different materials in this watch. It's always a good sign when a company tries to innovate and use something different so that they can advance the watch, as opposed to just going with a tried and true formula. So I really admire the fact that they didn't bother just going with plain stainless steel. They went with titanium, which not only is really light and strong, but it also has hyperallergenic properties as well, meaning that if you have some sort of a steel or nickel allergy, you won't need to worry about that. And it keeps going on the inside as well. They have that silicone escapement, which they've made sure to highlight by making it purple. Things like that you can just really appreciate, and appreciate the fact that they've not only put in all these details, but they've made sure that they're visible and apparent, so you know exactly what you're getting. Some companies will put that sort of thing in the background, but Zenith has made sure that you know you're getting something special. You know you're getting something that uses exotic materials, and it just adds to the feeling of value when you look at and wear this watch. The second thing I'd like to highlight is the finish. Having an open work dial is a risky proposition, because it means not only do you need to make sure that the movement looks good from the back, but also from the front as well. But they've made sure to finish this movement on front and back to a degree that really you would expect from something from like an Audemars Piguet or a Patek Philippe. The way that they alternate between satin finishes and bevels and polished bevels, it all adds together to make looking at it an experience. When you change it through the light, you see different things that you wouldn't see if you didn't see it at a different angle. All of that adds to it just being an amazing experience to look at how this watch is actually powered and how it actually moves. And then the last thing that I'd like to highlight, it's not the most exotic thing, but it's a nice little thing to notice, and that's the fact that it has a double quickset. The fact that you can actually alternate it front and back when you're resetting it. Me, as someone who has a few watches and I like to rotate between them, so I constantly have to reset them, when you're making a mistake on the quickset, it's a pain having to then rotate through the whole month. So the fact that you can actually rotate back and forth through it, it's probably not going to be anyone's deal maker or deal breaker, but it is something I wanted to highlight because it's a cool quirk that you don't find on every movement, and I like the fact that they're making sure that they still have a few interesting tricks up their sleeve despite this only being a basic 3-hander. But as I always say, no watch is perfect, and despite the positives on this watch, there are some negative points too. The first one is with regard to the titanium. While yes, it is extremely light, it's hyperallergenic, it also adds that lightness that sometimes people don't really appreciate. When you have a watch on your wrist, especially a luxury watch, you want to feel that weight, you want to feel it's there. And for some people it can be really disturbing because A, it means you look at your wrist every now and again because you feel like you've dropped your watch or it's fallen off or something because you can barely notice it's there. But more to the point, some people get a sensation of cheapness. When you get a cheap steel watch, it's a lot lighter because there's usually less metal, or it's a lot thinner in places where it should be thicker. So you can get that physical sensation of cheapness on this watch if you're not accustomed to wearing a titanium watch. And that can be a disadvantage for a lot of people, and it can even put them off. The second disadvantage to this watch is that while I do love what they've done with the open work dial, it looks beautiful, it gives you so much to look at, it also distracts a lot. It makes it difficult to read the time on the watch because there's so much going on, you can't just glance at it. You're more likely to get distracted and admire the escapement than seeing the actual time. Happily, however, Zenith does offer a closed dial option if you are put off by that. And then the last thing, and this is something that pains me to list it as a negative, but it is a reality, is that it is just a Zenith. And what I mean by that is that you really need to want a Zenith, you really need to know about a Zenith. Most people will look over it purely because they don't recognize the brand, and that's more to do with the fact that Zenith is still working on how they can market themselves, how they can get their perception in the market to such a point that they're viewed in the same breath as an Omega, as a Rolex, by people who aren't necessarily as deep into the watch world as others are. Well, for me personally, that's not an issue, and if anything, I feel like the positives of this watch show that it can stand on its own feet as a model, without having to lean on any sort of brand equity. For people, it matters what brand it is, and it matters how the brand is perceived, and at the end of the day, it just makes it a very niche product, and that can work against it in terms of if it matters to you what other people think or even know about your watch. But overall though, like I said, I feel that this watch stands on its own 2 feet, is a great effort and step forward for Zenith to create an icon that's instantly recognizable as Zenith. And also, I might add that one of the advantages of not having a crazy brand equity like something like Rolex is that it is also much more reasonably priced. Now, when I say reasonably priced, of course we are talking luxury watches, so don't take that as it's cheap. It retails for $7,500 US, and its resale price is somewhere between $5,000 to $7,000 US. So it does drop off a fair bit if you're buying pre-owned, but that all means that it is a lot easier to obtain. It means also that if you are buying new, you can have more negotiating power. And if you think about it, you're getting a titanium watch with a manufacturer movement, an integrated bracelet, an open case back, and an open work dial that are both beautifully decorated, as well as a ton of technology on the inside. It does make a stunning value proposition when you think about how much you're getting with this watch. And it also makes you think twice about some other brands where perhaps most of that price tag is the brand and not necessarily what you're actually getting physically with the watch or on a technical level. So on that basis, I would say it's a great value, but at the end of the day, it is definitely a watch that you need to want specifically, but there's a lot of reasons to want it as well, so I feel that works to its advantage. Either way, if you are interested in this specific watch, do check out the links below to Zega Watches in Sydney, Australia, so that you can see this watch and several others that they have, and thanks again to them for lending this watch to the channel so that I could review it. But let me know in the comments below what you think of the Defy Classic. What do you think of its status as a potential future Zenith icon? What do you think of its open work dial, or would you prefer the regular blue dial? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course if you like the video, please do like it and share it, and if you want to see new watch content every week, then make sure that you subscribe to Shaluso as well. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.